Discover the incredible transformation when a wedding thought illegal exposes a hidden sheriff. In the small town of Maplewood, where whispers of hope mingled with the heavy scent of coffee, Eliza stood behind the counter of the cozy corner diner. Her hands moved with practiced ease, pouring steaming cups of coffee, the gentle clink of mugs mingling with the chatter of regulars. But beneath her smile hid dreams as vulnerable as a daisy chain her daughter Rosie loved to weave in their backyard. At just 10 years old, Rosie held a spark that could ignite the darkest days, each flower a thread in a tapestry of resilience. "Wanna make a daisy chain with me tonight, Mom?" Rosie's big eyes sparkled with innocence, pulling Eliza from her thoughts. Eliza was just about to answer when the bell above the door swung open wide, and in walked Tom, her partner, a man whose rugged exterior softened around her like a well-worn blanket. Today felt different. Heart pounding, Tom slipped a small, velvet box from his pocket. "Eliza, will you marry me?" he asked, as if the world outside had paused in anticipation. Her heart soared as she said yes, a single tear rolling down her cheek. The diner erupted in applause, a chorus of well-wishes that could lift a storm cloud, something for their struggling town to celebrate, but that joy quickly turned into a tightening knot in her stomach when Sheriff Bryce, a man famously stern, announced a crackdown on weddings deemed illegal due to outdated licensing laws. "We must enforce the law," he declared, face set like stone, as her dreams felt like they were being ripped from her grasp. Voices raised in concern, some supported Eliza, while others remained silent, troubled by the shadows of their own lives. "What do you think you're doing, Sheriff? We deserve to celebrate, too," Eliza shouted, indignation fueling her heart. The townsfolk looked on, unsure, caught in the crossfire of conflicting emotions as anger surged and ebbed like the ocean tides. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As tensions rose, whispers echoed through alleyways and between fences. Eliza found herself caught off guard when a distraught figure stood before her, the sheriff's estranged son, visibly shaken and struggling under the weight of the same oppressive system. "They won't let me marry the love of my life," he admitted, his voice cracking. Eliza wrestled with the realization that Bryce's rigid adherence to outdated laws had not just brought division, it revealed wounds that cut deep into the fabric of their community. As she sought to challenge the sheriff's authority, she understood that the fight wasn't just about her own wedding, it symbolized something larger. Would the town step away from fear and unite for change? Would love prevail in the face of injustice, or would fear keep them shackled? As the wedding day approached, clouds of uncertainty loomed, leaving everyone restless. Eliza stood at a crossroads, the fate of hope resting in her hands. What if the fire ignited in Maplewood was enough to spark a transformation, challenging everything they thought they knew? Would the town finally find their way back to each other, or choose the comfort of silence? The moment for change was coming, and Eliza felt she was ready to lead the charge. The morning of the wedding dawned crisp and bright, sunlight pouring into the sleepy town of Maplewood like a reluctant promise. Eliza stood beside Rosie in their modest backyard, weaving daisies, a ritual that felt familiar and comforting. Today's flowers had an added weight, each one representing hope, resilience, and the potential for something extraordinary to unfold. "Do you think people will come?" Rosie asked, glancing up with those wide eyes, so trusting and eager. Eliza knelt down to meet her gaze. "They will, sweetheart. They might not all agree with us at first, but love brings everyone together, doesn't it?" Yet, doubt lingered in her heart. The sheriff's stark warning still echoed. The weight of tradition and the law pressed down harder than she ever expected. The tension had brewed a storm within the townsfolk, a mixture of fear, anger, and hope. With every passing moment, Eliza could feel their collective heartbeat, thumping in unison, as if they were all waiting for someone to take the first step. Tom approached from the porch, a nervous excitement in his eyes. Everything is set at the diner for the ceremony. Are you ready to face the crowd? Eliza nodded slowly, her eagerness tangled with an apprehension she couldn't shake. She caught a glimpse of Sheriff Bryce through the kitchen window. He stood rigid, surveying the bustle around the diner. His presence loomed large, a storm cloud threatening to overshadow their sunny day, but she refused to let him cast a shadow on her heart. As they walked together, Rosie skipped ahead, flitting like a firefly in her new dress. The excited murmur of townsfolk greeted them as they neared the diner, each face a mix of joy and uncertainty. Some nodded encouragingly, while others whispered behind cupped hands, wary of the sheriff's wrath. Eliza stepped to the microphone set up outside, her palms clammy against its cool surface. She could feel the energy buzzing in the air, a palpable current, sparking with every hesitant cheer from the crowd. "Thank you all for coming," she exclaimed, her voice trembling slightly but growing more confident with each word. "Today isn't just about me and Tom. It's about all of us who believe in love, in unity, and the power of a community willing to stand together for what is right." Cheers erupted, but just as quickly, silence fell when Sheriff Bryce stepped forward, authority radiating from him like the heat of a summer sun. "I cannot stand by while you break the law," he declared, voice strong but cracking under the weight of resistance. "I am here to uphold justice." Eliza locked eyes with him, feeling an unexpected surge of courage. "What is justice, Sheriff, if it doesn't serve the people? We are here to demand change. Change that reflects love and community, not fear." An electric hush fell over the group. The sheriff's gaze softened for just a moment, revealing a flicker of doubt, perhaps even regret, but it was quickly masked by his hardened resolve. Eliza pressed on, her spirit igniting something deep within the townsfolk. Behind her, Rosie stood holding her daisy chain, a symbol of innocence and hope, embodying the very future they all sought. The townspeople began to shuffle forward, drawn in by the courage sparking within Eliza and what this day could mean for Maplewood, but just as the tide began to shift, a loud shout broke the moment. "What is happening here?" The voice was sharp and accusatory, cutting through the hesitation like a hot knife through butter. Eliza's heart raced. She recognized that voice all too well. It belonged to the town's most vocal critic of change. And what he revealed next could either tear them apart or bind them closer together. Eliza Morgan. The sharp, grating voice of Caleb Winters rang out through the crowd like a fire alarm, jerking heads around and causing a ripple of apprehension. He stood tall, a fierce scowl etched into his weathered face, flanked by a few of his equally frustrated followers. It was a scene that ignited an immediate, uneasy tension in the air. The atmosphere thickened, transforming from burgeoning solidarity to a battleground on the edge. Eliza felt the crowd's collective breath catch, an unsteady pause before the storm. Rosie looked up at her mother, eyes wide with confusion, clutching the daisy chain tightly, as though it could shield them all from what came next. "Are you really going to stand here, celebrating this farce?" Caleb spat, bitter contempt dripping from his tongue. "This is not love, Eliza. This is a mockery of our values. I am standing here for love." Eliza shot back, her heartbeat quickening. She could not back down now. For everyone who believes they deserve happiness, who believes they deserve a chance to love freely. The murmur in the crowd began to swell, voices rising and falling like an ocean tide. Some whispered in agreement, emboldened by her passion, while others sided with Caleb, their discord amplifying the tension. Sheriff Bryce hesitated, caught between his duty and the weight of the moment, but Caleb pushed his advantage forward, his tone both mocking and triumphant. "You all think this is about love? The law is clear. You're inviting chaos into Maplewood. Just look. Look at how divided you've all become." Eliza glanced at the faces surrounding her, reminding herself of why they had come together. Her fingers tightened around the microphone, anchoring her in determination. "Change is never easy, Caleb. It comes from courage. From hearts willing to seek what is true. I want to stop fighting for what I believe in, the kind of love that breaks walls, not builds them. A gentle breeze swayed the trees, whispering among the crowd, completing her words with a soft reassurance. But even as Eliza's hope soared, reality bore down. The sheriff's eyes flickered between them, duty to defend the law battling empathy for the humanity laid bare before him. Just then, Rosie, her tiny voice piercing through the escalating tension, spoke up. Why can't we all love each other? No one should be sad. It's just love. Her innocence rang like a bell, breaking the charged air. A few people in the crowd couldn't help but smile, the weight of discontent momentarily lifted by the sincerity of a child. Caleb scoffed, but the glances cast in Rosie's direction revealed chinks in his armor. People began to murmur, sharing hopeful looks and whispering among themselves. The seeds of possibility were starting to sprout. What about community? Eliza pressed, seizing the fleeting moment. What about the love we have for each other as neighbors? Family? We have the power to create a Maplewood where everyone belongs. Can't you see? We're stronger together. The crowd leaned in, drawn by the strength in her words, some nodding vigorously. But Caleb wasn't finished. Spurred by the fierce pulse of his anger, he shouted back, "You'll ruin this town before you change it." As tensions escalated, the sheriff took a step forward, his voice steady but low, a somber undertone of resignation lacing his words. Perhaps there's more to this situation than I realized. Eliza's heart quickened as she sensed an opening. Could the sheriff's internal struggle lead to something greater? And as she locked eyes with him, she knew she must push forward, but something deep within stirred an uneasy anticipation. What would he say next? Would he choose the law or the love the community was crying out for? The answer loomed, heavy with uncertainty, hanging between them like a sword waiting to drop. What if? Eliza's mind raced, filled with both dread and hope. What if the sheriff took a stand? What if today wouldn't end in heartbreak, but rather transform Maplewood forever? The sheriff's voice broke through the chaos like a bell tolling in a fog. Eliza, I know the town's hearts are heavy with division, but laws are there for a reason. He hesitated, his brow furrowing further as his words tumbled out. But maybe it's time to listen, really listen, to what you're all saying. A wave of gasps rippled through the crowd. Optimism sparking in their eyes, people leaned in closer, straining to hear. Eliza could feel hope igniting a fragile flame inside her. Could the sheriff truly bridge this gap? Eliza, you talk of love, Sheriff Bryce said, his gaze searching hers. His hands gestured softly, almost pleading. But love must exist within boundaries. If we disregard the law, where does it lead us? Caleb seized the moment, stepping toward the sheriff, his tone oozing with disdain. See? Even your own sheriff knows this is madness. You're playing with fire, Eliza. But Eliza didn't waver, the crowd's shifting energy fueled her fire. It's not madness, Caleb. It's a chance to redefine what it means to belong. We're not saying we don't respect the law, we're saying we need a law that respects us. Love shouldn't come with conditions. As she spoke, a light mist began to fall, softening the harshness of the afternoon. The gentle drops felt like a benediction, washing away the tension that had settled. Eliza could see the toll it was taking on the faces surrounding her. She continued, her voice rising above the drizzle. We can create a Maplewood where love isn't treated like an outcast. Where our children, like Rosie, can grow up understanding that love is love, and that should never be a crime. The crowd murmured in agreement, a chorus of voices rising in solidarity. Caleb scowled, arms crossed tight against his chest. And what will that leave us with? A free-for-all where anything goes? You might as well tell people to ignore every law on the books. Maybe some laws should change, Sheriff Bryce interjected, his voice steady but firm. He took a breath, weighing the stares upon him. The crowd held its collective breath, pockets of silence swirling amid the downpour. What matters more? The laws, or the hearts that they serve? The sheriff seemed to experience a transformative moment, his expression shifting from stoicism to something more empathetic. Eliza felt her heart soar, a warmth spreading outwards like sunlight breaking through clouds. She could sense the tide turning. Caleb, realizing he was losing ground, pressed on obstinately. The people who follow the law are the backbone of Maplewood. You'll risk everything if you let this folly continue. As Eliza raised her chin defiantly, she caught sight of Rosie, who had moved closer and was now tugging on the sheriff's jacket. Please, Mr. Sheriff. We just want to love. You can make it better. The innocence of the child's request struck everyone. Eliza could see some in the crowd fighting back tears, softened by the weight of Rosie's simple plea. Mr. Sheriff, please. Eliza's voice trembled with emotion. What if we find a way to create love and community without sacrificing respect for the law? A flicker of understanding shone in Bryce's eyes as he nodded, his expression no longer rigid but rather contemplative. Perhaps, he said slowly, it's time for a conversation. One that involves the whole town. Before Eliza could respond, Caleb's face twisted with fury, a mixture of disbelief and anger. You can't be serious. I am, the sheriff replied firmly, determination seeping into his words. Let us meet as a community and discuss this together openly. The crowd erupted into murmurs of hope and excitement, ignited by the concept of uniting for change. Eliza felt a rush of gratitude toward Rosie, who had so unwittingly stirred the hearts of those around them. But just as triumph seemed within reach, Caleb's furious shout pierced the air. You all are playing with fire, and when it burns, I want to help pick up the pieces. As Eliza felt the tension surge again, she turned to the sheriff, her heart pounding. Will you really stand with us, Sheriff? Will you guide us? Bryce looked out over the crowd, reflecting the uncertainty that hung in the air. I'll do my best, he finally said, though his voice hinted at the challenge ahead. The question lingered, thick with tension. Could they truly find a path to unity in this divided town? And as the rain began to fall more heavily, washing away the remnants of fear, factions remained. What storm was brewing within them all? And how far would they go to overcome it together? The rain intensified, turning the downpour into a steady rhythm, each drop charged with promise and fear. Eliza felt the chill seep into her bones, but her spirit burned brightly. She searched the faces in the crowd. Some were hopeful, eyes glistening with the potential for change. Others remained stubborn, rigid as the clouds above. Can you feel it? She called out, raising her voice above the rain. This is our moment. A chance to redefine Maplewood. The onlookers began to nod, some gripping each other's hands, forming chains of solidarity. But Caleb was relentless, his voice slicing through the moment like a knife. This isn't over. You think a little rain can wash away years of tradition? You'll regret this foolishness. Eliza took a breath, steadying herself. It's not about disregarding tradition, Caleb. It's about embracing growth. About allowing love to flourish instead of choking it under rules that don't serve us anymore. The sheriff stood at the forefront, seemingly torn. He glanced at Eliza, then back at the crowd. Let us put aside our fears and talk. Let us open our hearts and minds. I can't promise answers today, but I can promise we'll listen, he said, his voice firm yet gentle. A ripple of approval emanated from the spectators, small murmurs of agreement catching like wildfire. Sheriff Bryce's words held weight, a shift away from fear toward understanding, something raw and powerful. Just then, a voice rang out from the back of the crowd. And what if it's not just talking? What if love needs action? It was Anna, a local activist who had always been a whisper for change. Eliza's heart raced. Anna's words hung there, daring the sheriff to meet the challenge. The sheriff frowned but nodded. If you believe so, then we'll take action. But let it be purposeful. Let us find solutions that honor everyone's heart. Eliza felt the air thrum with energy. This was what they had needed, an avenue to not just voice their anguish but a chance to craft a future none of them had envisioned together. But amid the spark of hope, a knot twisted in her stomach. What would true action look like? Everyone wanted love, but they had to reconcile it with the law. Caleb scoffed, arms crossed tighter. What's it going to be then? A town meeting? That's going to fix years of deep-seated history. You're all being naive. Naivety can't block love, Caleb, Eliza shot back, feeling the surge within her. Love has its own strength. We've already spent too much time in shadows. Let us bring this to light, and let that light guide us. Suddenly, the rain stopped. The clouds parted just enough to let a few beams of sunlight pierce through, illuminating the faces in the crowd, each radiating a different emotion: hope, skepticism, anticipation. Wow, murmured Rosie softly from beside the sheriff, tugging gently at his coat again. Do you think the sun is happy too? A collective chuckle broke the tension, and even Caleb couldn't hide the faintest crack in his facade. Laughter was contagious, it transformed fear into a shared moment of humanity, something Rosie's innocence had evoked. Let us not waste this moment, Sheriff Bryce encouraged again, his tone rising with urgency. Who's with me to make Maplewood a place where everyone can love freely, where we can honor our community's heart? Eliza felt the warmth of solidarity envelop her. They could make an impact together. Hope wrapped around the gathered crowd like a warm hug. But before any commitments could solidify, a new voice interjected, a gruff, eloquent presence from the edge of the crowd. You're acting without thinking. The law isn't just some barrier, it's what keeps us safe. Eliza's heart sank. Who was this new contender? What more would this encounter demand of them? The crowd turned, the air thickening with uncertainty again, leaving Eliza with a deep-seated worry. Could they truly come together to face not just the law, but fears and rejection embedded within it? As the town's passion teetered on the brink, one question remained. Would they have the courage to confront the hidden truths before them, or would they let division rule them once more? Eliza's heart pounded in her chest as the new figure stepped closer, his voice strong and unwavering. She could see his rough edges, the way the sun gleamed off his hardened face. This isn't a game, folks. He declared, arms gesturing animatedly to emphasize his point. You can't just waltz in here and demand change without considering the repercussions. The murmurs began again, some people nodding toward the newcomer, while others looked back at Eliza and the sheriff. Caleb's smirk returned, as if he had been waiting for an ally to reinforce his stance. See. Even he sees the foolishness of it all. Enough. Sheriff Bryce stepped forward, his patience slipping. You're right that the law matters, but it's also meant to serve our community. If it doesn't, then it's time for us to advocate for that change together. He scanned the crowd, searching for respect and understanding. But how can we protect our town if we fear the truth? As Eliza watched, the crowd began to split, people choosing sides like autumn leaves caught in a gust of wind. Hopeful faces turned skeptical, fear and anger bubbled just beneath the surface. She felt anxiety crawl up her spine. They were standing on the precipice of change, but would they jump together? Listen to yourselves. Anna shouted, stepping out boldly, her eyes fierce and passionate. You talk of safety, but real safety is about being seen, about being accepted for who you are. Who are we protecting if we choke people's right to love? A low murmur of agreement rippled through Eliza's side of the crowd, and for a moment, she felt the weight of unity pressing against doubt. The glimmer of collective resolve was electrifying, and Eliza found herself feeling more connected than ever before. But then the stranger stepped into the pond of hope with a heavy stone. You think just because you speak loud, things will change? People like tradition, they like keeping things predictable. A majority of Maplewood doesn't want what you're proposing. His indignation spurred more scowls from the crowd, particularly from the older members, who were visibly shaken. Eliza swallowed hard. She took a moment, searching for words that would bridge the widening gap. Yes, tradition matters, she said slowly, looking around at the crowd. But what if we can find a new tradition that includes everyone? What if we redefine what it means to love in our town? The sheriff nodded, his expression a blend of support and determination. We have to try. Fear can no longer rule us. We've always been a community built on dialogue. It's time we expand that to embracing every member, no matter who they love. Anna took a step toward Eliza, their eyes locking for a brief, powerful moment. You know what is important, Eliza. We just need to remind the town about it rather than force them to change. With the sun shining warmly down, illuminating their faces, something shifted. A hesitant applause began in the back of the crowd. It grew louder, echoing through the air. Eliza couldn't help but smile, hope surging within her, but the gruff newcomer would not back down. You're romanticizing this. Change may not come without losses. So many of you will face the fallout of your crusade. Every brow furrowed, tension blooming anew. Eliza could feel the walls closing in again, hearts growing heavy. In this moment of uncertainty, she choked on her bravery and spoke again. But is it a loss if love and acceptance grow from it? Isn't it worth fighting for what is truly right, even at the risk of what we've known? Silence enveloped them, thick and heavy as the clouds had once been. Eyes darted between Eliza, the sheriff, and the newcomer. Then, just as the storm had passed, an elderly woman stepped forward from the crowd, her frame hunched but her voice steady. You're right, Eliza, but what happens when the love we fight for becomes a breaking point for others? Eliza's heart sank. The question lingered in the air like the scent of rain-soaked earth, potent and raw. What if their fight led to more division? What unresolved truths are they about to uncover, as the first rays of understanding began to glitter among them, the ground beneath felt unsteady. Would they unite to face the storm of controversy ahead, or would they let fear keep them apart once more? The air was thick with tension as Eliza gazed out at the audience of familiar faces, now marred by fear and skepticism. Moments stretched like the shadows cast by the tree branches overhead. People's expressions changed with the wind, some still doubtful, others filled with a budding sense of hope. The elderly woman's question hung like a storm cloud, and Eliza knew she had to respond, even against her racing heart. What if we don't need to put love into boxes? She called out, voice rising with an urgency she felt deep within. What if we can build something new together? Our differences don't have to divide us, they can actually connect us more deeply. A ripple of murmured conversations began to float through the crowd. Some nodding, others looking away, grappling with their own turmoil. The man with the hardened face continued his silent stance, doubt etched on his features. Caleb's previous smirk had slipped into a frown, and for a heartbeat, Eliza thought she saw worry in his eyes. Sheriff Bryce stepped closer again, sensing the wavering of wills. Those who oppose change often cling to the familiar, but the familiar can also become a prison. We should never be afraid to question what we've always done, he said, his words laced with passion. Eliza's chest swelled with gratitude for the sheriff's courage. She took a deep breath, letting the warmth of the sun seep into her skin like a tentative embrace. This is our chance to craft a new future for Maplewood, she implored softly. One without the chains of fear and prejudice. Isn't it time we set aside our hesitations? Love is a bridge, not a wall. We need to build that bridge. A woman from the back stepped forward, her face flushed with resolve. But what if not everyone sees it the same way? What if we truly lose people, friends and family? There was a weight of despair behind her words that resonated through the crowd. Eliza felt that familiar ache in her heart, one she shared with many who fought for what was right. Yes, there may be losses, she admitted, feeling the heat of her sincerity radiate from her. But I would rather lose what was never meant to be than lose those I love to silence. We can no longer turn a blind eye to those who suffer because of our inaction. We can create a safe space for everyone, but it starts with us. The crowd shifted again, uncertainty buzzing like static electricity, intertwining with the threads of hope. Eliza watched people absorbing her words, faces softening with contemplation, and then she caught a glimpse of Caleb once more. This time, there was something different in his demeanor, a flicker of guilt or perhaps an urge to understand, but before anyone could speak again, the newcomer thrust his hands into the air, drawing attention back to him. "Your passion is commendable, but too much change too quickly." Suddenly, the sound of sirens pierced the air, slicing through the building tension. Eliza turned, heart racing. 2 police cars flanked the edge of the community square, lights flashed violently against the backdrop of fading sunlight. "What is happening?" whispered someone near the back, wide-eyed. Eliza's stomach dropped as a dark realization crept in. What would this mean for their movement? Were they being silenced before even starting? The sheriff held up a hand as if to calm the crowd, but there was a flicker of concern in his eyes. "I didn't request backup," he murmured, tension rippling through his words. As officers emerged from the vehicles, Eliza felt the world shift beneath her, uncertainty swirling wildly around them. Anything could happen now. Was this the moment of judgment for their hopes? Or was it the beginning of a transformation they didn't see coming? The crowd gasped as the lead officer stepped forward, his gaze fixed intently on the sheriff. "Sheriff Bryce, we need to talk now." Eliza felt the air grow still, realization dawning on her. She had no idea how deeply this moment could unravel everything they were fighting for. What secrets would be unearthed? And would love truly be allowed to triumph? Eliza's heart raced. The air felt electric, charged with the weight of possibility and fear. As the lead officer approached Sheriff Bryce, Eliza could see the concern seep deeper into the sheriff's features, lines of worry creeping into his otherwise steadfast demeanor. The crowd held its breath, sensing that whatever happened next could tip the fragile balance they had barely begun to establish. Eliza's mind raced through scenarios. Were they being shut down before they even had a chance to start? Was this all just a mirage built from hope? She sensed the crowd's mood shifting, violet threads of concern winding through their collective thoughts. Whispers spread like wildfire, their volume rising, conflicting emotions battling for dominance, creating a deafening hum in the air. "Sheriff, we are investigating something serious," the officer stated, his voice steady yet urgent. The crowd leaned in closer, ears straining to catch every word. "It involves a marriage license issued recently. One that has raised some questions." Gasps echoed throughout the square, eyes darting around as the implications rolled out like a red carpet layered with confusion and fear. Eliza's stomach churned. Who could it be? Her mind turned to those she loved, friends who were already braving the societal storm. Had someone's happiness drawn unwanted attention? The lead officer stepped back, intensifying the scrutiny on the sheriff. "We suspect that this wedding may have violated state and local regulations, and we need to talk about how to proceed." "What regulations?" someone shouted from the back, their voice trembling. "Love doesn't have rules like that." Eliza's pulse quickened. This was not just about love, it was about survival. Sheriff Bryce held up a hand, trying to calm the growing storm. "We will address this," he assured the crowd, his voice a steady anchor amidst the whirlwind of anxiety. "But we must first understand what we're dealing with. Don't let them intimidate us." Eliza shouted, her voice joining the mix. "This is our moment to stand up. Love is not illegal, it's what we have fought for." The sheriff nodded, breathing heavily. "Eliza is right. We have to speak now before fear tries to silence us." Suddenly, Caleb stepped forward, a flicker of sympathy on his face. "If there's one thing this town needs, it's unity. But we have to know if someone's freedom is at stake, if it means more lives than just our own." Eliza felt a rush of emotion. Could he really be coming around? She wanted to believe in the change sparking in Caleb's heart. Just then, the lead officer turned toward the crowd. "We are only asking for cooperation," he said, trying to quell the tension. "But we need to uncover the truth of this situation." Yet, Eliza could see the seeds of fear taking root, the thin veneer of hope cracking under the weight of uncertainty. As the sheriff moved to engage the officer in private conversation, the crowd began to murmur anxiously amongst themselves, glancing at Eliza for reassurance. "Remember," she urged, her voice raising to lead them forward, "love is our greatest weapon. The fight isn't over. We can't let this news shatter our dreams." A woman with tear-streaked cheeks nodded, determination sparking in her eyes. "What if the truth brings that couple into danger?" she whispered, a looming question at the forefront of their fight. "I don't know," Eliza admitted, her own heart heavy with the weight of uncertainty. "But if we don't stand together, what future do we have?" Just then, a sudden shout drew everyone's attention. "Look!" someone cried, pointing. A dark figure stood at the edge of the square, watching intently, and as eyes turned to this newcomer, Eliza felt a chill race through her. "Who is that?" she whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. The figure stepped forward, eyes blazing with an intensity that made Eliza's skin prickle. And just like that, something about this stranger felt like a turning point, one that could either plunge them into darkness or illuminate a path they desperately needed. Was this the ally they sought? Or a harbinger of something more sinister? Eliza's heart hammered as the figure moved closer, and she could only wonder what revelations were about to unfold. The figure stepped into the fading light of the square, each movement deliberate, as if every step was measured against the weight of the crowd's expectations. Eliza held her breath, her heart pounding against her chest like a drum. The noise of the murmurs faded, swallowed up by the magnetic draw of suspense that wrapped around them all. As the stranger approached closer, Eliza's mind raced with possibilities. Was this person here to deliver more bad news? Someone who would shut down their dreams completely? Or could they be someone sent to help, to fight alongside them? The crowd parted slightly, eyes glued to the newcomer, and Eliza couldn't shake the feeling that this moment would change everything. The figure was tall, cloaked in black, with sharp features catching the last rays of sunlight. The eyes dark and piercing scanned the crowd with a resolve that filled the air with unspoken promises. Eliza stepped forward instinctively, her heartbeat quickening as the stranger stopped in front of her, a heavy silence overshadowing them. "I hear you're fighting for love," the stranger said, a slight smile tugging at the corners of their mouth. "But sometimes, love needs a little fire to stoke the flames." Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Eliza couldn't tell if the smile was reassuring or something more dangerous. It sent a shiver down her spine. "Who are you?" she blurted out, the strength of her voice surprising even herself. "My name is Rowan," they replied, their tone confident. "And I've seen the darkness that shadows this town. You think love is all you need, but there are systems in place that can crush even the purest intentions." Eliza's mind reeled. "What do you mean?" Rowan took a step closer, lowering their voice so only Eliza could hear. "I know about the marriage license. I know who it belongs to." A flicker of recognition flashed through Eliza's mind. Her friends. The couple they all loved and supported. The very reason they had gathered in this square. "I can help you, but you'll have to trust me." Trust? It hung in the air like fog, thick and oppressive. Eliza glanced back at the crowd, faces uncertain and hopeful, eyes reflecting a myriad of emotions, a blend of fear, love, and the simmering rage of injustice. In that moment, the stakes felt impossibly high, and her gut twisted at the impending decisions. "What will we have to do?" she queried, wrestling with her sense of urgency and caution. Rowan glanced towards the sheriff and the officer, who were engaged in a hushed conversation, their expressions grave. "We need to take a chance. We need to draw attention, make them see how wrong this is. A protest could shift everything, but it has to be organized, loud, and united." Eliza felt the heat of determination course through her veins. She nodded, firm in her resolve. "Then that's what we'll do. We'll show them that love can't be locked away." A roar of agreement swept through the crowd, stoking the fires of hope. But before they could gather their resolve, the sheriff turned sharply, his eyes meeting Rowan's. Eliza held her breath, sensing a clash emerging in the air between them, like storm clouds rolling in. "Who are you?" Sheriff Bryce demanded, his voice booming, cutting through the excitement around them. Rowan didn't falter. "I'm someone who believes in freedom. Someone willing to fight for it." The response was electric. The crowd shifted, the energy palpable. Eliza's heart raced at the unexpected confrontation. Would this bring unity, or would it invite a deeper division? As the two locked eyes, the tension in the square felt like it could snap. Eliza swallowed hard, her gut twisting with anticipation. What would happen next? In that pivotal moment, she understood, they weren't just fighting for love, they were standing on the brink of a war that could reshape everything they knew. "Trust is the currency of change," Rowan whispered to her, nudging her back into reality. "Are you ready to pay the price?" Eliza took a deep breath, the weight of the moment crashing over her. The question lingered, heavy in the air. Would they have what it takes? As the confrontation loomed, she felt the cloud of uncertainty surrounding them, thickening with every passing second. What would the sheriff decide? And what consequences awaited them if they pushed back? As Eliza steadied herself against the weight of uncertainty, everything felt on the verge of being set free or crushed, a tense moment caught between change and fear. The crowd waited with bated breath, eyes flickering between her, Sheriff Bryce, and Rowan. It wasn't just a confrontation, it was a tipping point for Maplewood. Is this town really willing to stand up for love? Rowan's voice resonated with passion and urgency. Then let us make them hear us. Eliza knew this was the moment. She turned to the sheriff, searching his eyes for any sign of support. "Sheriff, we need to show everyone that love is more powerful than fear, and we deserve to live in a town that honors that." The sheriff's gaze softened as he glanced at the crowd, their faces reflecting courage and anticipation. Something deep within him slowly began to crack that hardened facade he had always worn. He raised his hands to silence the murmurs, stepping forward. "We are a community, built on trust and respect," Sheriff Bryce began, his voice slicing through the tension, gathering strength from the hearts of those gathered. "But there can be no true respect without inclusion. It's time this town recognized that love, in all its forms, should not be shackled by fear of the unknown. We owe it to ourselves and our future generations." As he spoke, murmurs of agreement rolled through the gathering. Eliza watched as some faces turned from doubt to hope, their former skepticisms melting like frost in the spring sun. But Caleb, still reeling, erupted. "And what about the traditions we've held dear? Do we really want to throw those away? You'll destroy everything that made Maplewood, or we can embrace what needs to change." Eliza shot back, fueled by the fire ignited within her. "Tradition is meant to evolve. We can't cling to outdated beliefs that hurt others. Our town must stand together, united in love, not divided by fear." "Love?" Caleb spat. "What about those who don't share your vision? What then?" Rowan stepped forward again. "That's where real strength lies, Caleb. In listening, in having dialogues that can be uncomfortable. We will not find common ground if we don't reach out." The crowd stirred restlessly, caught in a whirlwind of emotions, a push and pull between modern thoughts and old ones. Eliza felt the tide shift palpably, kindling a courage that surged through her veins. "We can't let their fears drown our hopes," Eliza called out to the crowd. "This is our home too. We deserve a place where we can express love freely, without the threat of retribution. You deserve the freedom to be who you are, to love who you love." An elderly man in the front stepped forward, voice shaky but filled with resolve. "I remember a time when love meant everything. My wife and I were ridiculed for loving each other against the odds. We fought for what we believed in, and it was worth it." His words resonated through the crowd, echoing sentiments that called them forth from their shadows of doubt. The spirit of solidarity that had been dormant began to awaken. With renewed vigor, Sheriff Bryce proclaimed, "Let us convene a town meeting. Let us open the floor to discussion, to challenge the laws that bind us and rewrite what it means to belong here in Maplewood. But understand, we need all voices, yes, even those who disagree with us at the table. Eliza felt tears pricking at the corners of her eyes. Yes. This was the spark they had prayed for, but it needed to grow. It could not stop here. Let it begin today. Let us set a date. Eliza shouted, her voice ringing with absolute conviction. Filled with an electric energy, the crowd began to chant. Love is love. Love is love. As they echoed the sentiment back, she saw the transformation unfold on the sheriff's face, a man who once stood in rigid authority, now shifting into a fortress of empathy and understanding. Around them, the rain stopped completely, the sun coming out in full force. Eliza smiled at Rowan, who gave her a nod, a silent acknowledgement of the battle they'd just started winning together. I have one more thing, Rowan said, raising a hand to quell the voices. Love needs action. We need to set an example, inspire others everywhere to show the power of unity. Let us do a peaceful march right through the center of town next weekend. Eliza proposed, excitement washing over her. We'll invite the whole community to join us. This town must see the courage of love. They should witness how grassroots action can spark change. The crowd exploded into applause, joy erupting like fireworks. In that moment, Eliza saw it not only as a victory but as a new beginning where relationships thrived, where acceptance was anchored, and where Maplewood could finally breathe again. Caleb stood silent, the fire in his eyes dimmed to surprise. Perhaps he felt hope after all, caught somewhere in the middle of transition, as the sunlight bathed them all in warmth, a natural vow of hope. Eliza took one last glance at Rosie, who was beaming with pride, her daisy chain held high like a banner of hope. This was the moment they dreamed of at the diner, the promise of love shifting the very landscape beneath their feet. Together, arm in arm, they marched forward. And as they did, Eliza held a knowing warmth in her heart, believing fiercely that love could truly conquer all, even fear. Let it be known, this is not the end, but a new chapter for Maplewood, a testament to friendship, love, and the courage to bring light to darkness. You need to subscribe now. Don't wait not even one more second to share this story with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and comment your reactions and feelings about this incredible ending. This is the moment to show your support and remind the world that love always wins.